Imagine for a second a paintbrush that can paint not just what you tell it to, but what you can't even fully describe. Or a co-writer that's literally read every book ever written. Well, this isn't science fiction anymore. This is the incredible, almost magical power of generative AI. And it has just slammed into the world of human creativity, poised to change absolutely everything we thought we knew about art and ownership and even inspiration itself.
So let's get into it. Here's the roadmap for what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at this new creative frontier, the good and the bad. Then we'll dive into the huge legal mess it's created, this copyright collision. From there, we'll talk about the artists caught in the crossfire. And then how governments are finally stepping in. And to wrap it all up, we'll ask the big question: how is all of this redefining what it even means to be creative?
All right, so generative AI didn't just, show up in the creative world. It absolutely exploded onto the scene. And like any massive explosion, it's a force of both incredible creation and, well, destruction. It really is the ultimate double-edged sword. On one side, you've got these amazing new opportunities, but on the other, you have some pretty serious, even existential risks for creators. And you can really see this tension and how creators themselves are talking about it. For the supporters, AI is this game-changing assistant. It handles the boring stuff, right? The menial tasks that suck up all your time and energy, which frees you up to focus on the big ideas. It can be an amazing brainstorming partner. But for the critics, well, they see a tool that was built by exploiting their life's work, used without any permission, without their consent, and certainly without any compensation.
I mean, the appeal is just undeniable. A staggering 90% of creative professionals see the huge potential here. They see a way to smash through creative blocks, to speed up their workflow, and ultimately to spend way more time on the stuff that actually matters: the core idea, the vision, that spark of human ingenuity.
And yet, here's the other side of that coin. Over half of those exact same creators are really, really worried. They're asking a pretty fundamental question. How were these incredibly powerful models actually built? The fear is that the answer involves scraping the entire internet, including their own personal portfolios and copyrighted work, to train an algorithm that could, one day, devalue their skills or even copy their unique style without them.
So this tension, this clash between innovation and exploitation, it didn't stay a theoretical debate for very long. Nope, it has erupted into a full-blown legal war that's being fought in courtrooms as we speak. And it all boils down to one huge question. In the age of AI, who owns what? Okay, so the main defense from the AI companies hangs on this old legal idea called fair use. They argue that training their models is transformative. It's kind of like a human artist studying thousands of paintings to develop their own style. But artists and publishers are firing back saying, whoa, hold on. Systematically feeding billions of images and texts into a machine to create a competing commercial product? That's not fair use, that's industrial-scale copyright infringement. And it's not just individual artists who are pushing back. We're seeing major institutions draw a line in the sand. The New York Times lawsuit is a perfect example. It's a massive case. The paper claims millions of its articles were used without permission to build tools like ChatGPT, tools that now compete with them, sometimes even spitting out their copyrighted text almost word for word. And in the world of visual arts, the fight is just as heated. Artists are teaming up in these huge class action lawsuits, claiming their entire life's work, the unique styles they've spent decades developing, was just scraped off the web without them even knowing, all to power the very image generators that can now mimic those styles in seconds. And these legal battles are being fought on a few different fronts. First, in the Thaler case, you've got this basic question of AI authorship, and the court was super clear: copyright is for humans, and AI can't be an author. Then you've got the huge input question in cases like the Artists versus Stability AI and the New York Times versus OpenAI. Was the training data itself legal? The answer to that is going to change everything for AI development. Okay, so beyond all the courtroom drama, this whole thing has a very real, very human cost. For the actual creators on the ground, this isn't some abstract debate. It's a source of huge anxiety about their jobs, their value, and their futures. But for some, it's also a source of brand new, totally unexpected opportunities. The feeling out there is just crystal clear. Almost 3/4 of creators feel like our current laws just aren't built for this new reality. They feel totally exposed, unprotected by copyright laws that were written for printing presses, not for neural networks. So they are looking straight to governments and lawmakers to step in and set some new rules of the road. And look, this isn't just some vague cry for help.
creators have very specific things they want. They want the basic right to say, no, you can't use my work for training. They overwhelmingly want tools to prove they made something in a world of infinite digital copies. And they want clear laws to protect them against AI being used to impersonate their style. It's all about transparency, control, and getting credit for their work.
But while this whole ethical debate is raging, a lot of creators are already using AI in really practical, less controversial ways. For a music producer, that might be using an AI tool to cleanly pull a vocal track out of a song for a remix. That used to be incredibly hard to do. For them, it's just a better tool for the job.
And others are using AI as a kind of expert assistant, like a personal tutor. Instead of digging through old forums, a sound engineer can just ask a large language model a super technical question and get an instant, detailed answer. It's speeding up the learning process and helping people get better at their craft.
And then there's this perspective, which is a big part of the creative community. For them, the ethical line has been crossed with the training data. They see it as a fundamental flaw, this poison pill at the very heart of the technology. And that leads them to just reject these tools completely, no matter how useful they might be.
Okay, so you have creators demanding action, companies locked in legal battles, governments around the world are finally realizing they can't just sit this one out anymore. The Wild West era of AI development seems to be coming to an end, and regulators are now stepping into the ring. What's really interesting is that there's no single global agreement on how to handle this. In the US, the focus is mostly on transparency, making companies show what they used for training. The European Union is taking this broader, risk-based approach, sorting AI by how much harm it could cause. And China is all about state control, forcing clear labels on AI content and holding companies responsible for what their models create. So, with all this happening, the fights, the regulations, where does that leave the actual act of creating something? Well, a really fascinating study suggests AI might be more than just a tool or a threat. It could be a force that's fundamentally changing what it even means to be an artist.
Yeah, check this out. Despite all the controversy, the data shows something pretty striking. When artists start using these tools, their creative productivity shoots up. They just make more stuff. But even more interesting, that work often gets a better reaction from their peers. More likes, more favorites. The machine isn't just making them faster, it seems to be helping them create work that connects more deeply with people.
But here's this incredible paradox the study found. On average, AI art is starting to look more and more the same. A kind of visual style is setting in. And yet, at the same time, the most innovative artists are using these exact same tools to explore completely new concepts, pushing the boundaries of creativity further than ever. And researchers have actually given a name to this new process: generative synesthesia. It describes a workflow where an artist's most important skills aren't technical anymore, not brushstrokes or camera settings. Instead, the most important skills become ideation and curation. It's about having a great idea, knowing how to ask the machine to explore it, and then having the refined taste to pick out the best result from a flood of options. And this brings us to one last really provocative thought. If a machine can handle the how, does the entire future of human creativity now lie in the what and the why? It suggests a future where the greatest artists might not be the ones with the best technical skills, but the ones with the clearest vision, the most interesting ideas, and just the undeniable strength of their taste.